At 9 years old, I woke up to the smell of burning plastic and my mother whispering in a language I didn't understand. Her hands hovered over a ripped Bible smoldering inside a dented roasting pan she had placed on the motel nightstand. "Fire cleanses, Noah," she murmured, her eyes glossy with something I couldn't name. "Your sins are not mine to carry." That was the last thing she said to me before dragging me outside into the freezing darkness of a Nevada morning. We drove in silence down I-80, her lips moving soundlessly, her fingers tapping the steering wheel in patterns that didn't match any music. I asked where we were going. She told me God would decide. Somewhere past mile marker 216, she pulled off the road and into a deserted gas station, the kind with one flickering light and vending machines older than me. "Go use the bathroom." "I'll be right back," she said, not looking at me. She handed me a $5 bill, a folded map, and a bottle of warm water. Her voice was flat, final. I stepped inside the restroom, the air thick with bleach and old air freshener. I remember staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror. My hands trembled. My chest felt too tight. Something inside me whispered, "She's leaving." I rushed outside. The car was gone. Just gone. At first, I thought maybe she was parking or circling back. But the lot was empty, and the only sound was the desert wind scraping sand across pavement. My shoes filled with dust. I waited. 10 minutes, then 30, then 2 hours. Sunrise painted the horizon with pink and gold, and I remember thinking, if she sees this, she'll come back. She'll think it's beautiful and she'll come back. But she didn't. A trucker named Marvin found me that afternoon, sitting on the curb with the $5 still clutched in my hand. I'd cried so hard my throat was raw. My voice was gone. My name was the only thing I could whisper. He didn't ask too many questions, just said, "All right, little man, let's get you somewhere warm." I didn't know then that Marvin was driving a refrigerated produce trailer to Sacramento, and that he had lost his wife 2 years earlier to breast cancer. I didn't know he would become the closest thing I'd ever have to a real father. All I knew was that his hands were rough but steady. And when I finally fell asleep in the bunk of his cab, it was the safest I'd felt in months. That night, under the glow of diner lights in Reno, Marvin sat across from me and told me something I'd never forget. "You can't control who you come from," he said, stirring powdered creamer into his coffee. "But you sure as hell get to choose who you become." He called child services in the morning. I was placed into foster care in Washoe County that week. I bounced between 5 homes in the next 2 years. Each one had a different kind of silence, some cold, some angry, some full of rules, but empty of love. But every few months, Marvin would find a way to visit. He brought me books, taught me how to fix things. On my 11th birthday, he mailed me a toolbox with my name engraved on it. "Every man deserves to build something of his own," the note read. By the time I was 13, I'd stopped wondering if my mother would ever come back. I stopped checking phone books. I stopped asking social workers. I built a wall in my mind, one brick at a time, sealing her away with every silent year. But even walls like that have hairline cracks and just big enough for doubt to slip through. At 17, I won a scholarship to Purdue's engineering summer program. Marvin drove me there himself. He didn't say much, just handed me a new wrench set and said, "Don't be the smartest guy in the room. Be the most useful." It worked. I got into UC Berkeley, graduated top of my class, specialized in renewable energy systems, founded a solar tech startup out of a garage in Stockton. By 29, we landed a federal contract with the Department of Energy. I was listed in Forbes as one of the top 30 under 30 in green technology. But success doesn't sterilize pain. It just quiets it. I still didn't talk about the motel, or the gas station, or the half-burned Bible. I told people my mom had died when I was 9. Easier that way, cleaner. Then 2 weeks ago, I opened my front door in Oakland, and there she was. Delilah. Her hair was the same pale gold, though streaked now with gray. Her face had the stretched tightness of someone clinging to youth like a shield. She wore a silk scarf around her neck and too much perfume. But I recognized her instantly. My chest hollowed. "Noah," she said, like the name tasted foreign. "You look just like your father." I didn't move. My dog Lumen stood silent beside me, sensing something tense and unnatural. She faltered. placing a manicured hand on her chest. "I've been looking for you for years." "Bullshit," I said and started to close the door. "No, wait, please." She slipped something through the crack. A flyer, glossy, colorful. It read, "The Awakening Grove, a healing community for spiritually lost children and their families." "I'm building something beautiful," she whispered. "But I need your help. Your funding, Noah." I froze, my pulse hammered in my neck. My mother, the woman who left me with a map and a $5 bill, had returned, not with an apology, not to reconnect, but to ask for money. Money. And before I could process the absurdity of it all, she said one more thing calmly, like she believed it. "You owe me, Noah. I gave you life. Now give it back." I didn't say anything. I just stared at her until something shifted in her eyes. A flicker of calculation. And then she smiled. "I already told the press about our reunion," she added. "The article comes out next Monday." My fingers tightened on the edge of the door. Because I knew this wasn't a request. It was blackmail. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, spinning like the thoughts in my head. Delilah, my mother, was real. She wasn't just some ghost trapped in my childhood. She had Bones skin perfume that clung to my shirt like guilt. And now she wanted money. Not just any money either. Investment money. As if she were pitching a startup on Shark Tank. I'd built my whole life on grit, silence, and distance from that woman. And now she wanted to collapse it all into a glossy pamphlet and a false redemption arc. No, not a chance. But I knew what her next move would be. She was always 3 steps ahead emotionally, even back then. She knew how to twist a story. She could cry on command and twist scripture like a magician. If she told the press her version first, I'd look like the heartless millionaire son turning away a fragile spiritual mother trying to reconnect. The kind of story that viral grifters eat up. I needed information. I needed leverage. So I made a call. Ezra picked up on the 3rd ring. "Noah, holy shit. It's been, 6 years?" His voice still had that scratchy edge, like cigarettes, and too much late-night text support. Ezra had been in the same foster system I went through, same hellhole in Sparks, Nevada. He got out early, thanks to his IQ, and a county judge with a soft spot for gifted delinquents. Last I heard, he was running dark web audits for whistleblowers and sleeping out of a converted ambulance in Oregon. "I need a favor," I said. "Delilah's back." Silence. Then a low whistle. "Damn. You want me to dig deep. She's calling herself a spiritual leader now." "The Awakening Grove." She dropped a flyer on my doorstep like it was a birthday card. "You got scanned copies already sent. Give me 72 hours, you've got 48. While Ezra dove into the digital dirt, I went analog. I started with the flyer. Glossy paper, clean fonts, buzzwords everywhere. Sacred alignment, trauma, cleansing retreats, non-denominational transcendence. The address was somewhere near Tehachapi, California. I plugged it into Google Maps. A repurposed vineyard. Of course. Nothing says cult but not illegal like wine country. The Grove's website was slick, clearly built by someone with funding. Testimonials, videos of Delilah dressed in flowing linen, her voice buttery and soft, talking about inner orphans and soul contracts. My jaw clenched every time she said the word child. My face was never shown, but in one video, she stood before a bonfire saying, "When I lost my son, I found my calling." The comments were full of angel emojis and strangers offering love and donations. The rage wasn't loud. It was quiet, controlled, focused. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to dismantle her. I reached out to Lena, next my ex. She was the kind of woman who made federal prosecutors sweat. She had the mind of a chess grandmaster and the patience of a cobra. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years, not since I chose startup funding over her proposal to move to DC. But when she picked up, she didn't hesitate. "You only call when something's on fire." "It's nuclear this time," I said. "Delilah, she's back. And she's trying to launder her reputation through my name. Tell me everything." Within an hour, she sent me an action plan. 1. Preemptively notify the media you've been contacted under duress. 2. File a cease and desist with her org's filing address. 3. Quietly gather financial data she's likely misusing nonprofit status. Lena was a surgeon with words. No drama, just clean cuts. The next day, Ezra sent his report. It was worse than I expected. Delilah's Grove was officially registered as a 501c3, but her board of directors was a list of shell names. Half the donations funneled through cryptocurrency wallets traced to Belize and Cyprus. One of the testimonials, AI generated. Her so-called daughter, Sarah, was really Sophia Cruz, a minor reality TV star turned self-help influencer known for hawking $400 moonstone candles and once faking a kidnapping for views. The whole thing was a house of cards, slick but fragile. I just needed to find the right brick to pull. Then came the twist. Ezra flagged something in a forgotten podcast episode. From 6 months ago, Delilah had spoken on an obscure wellness channel, drunk on admiration and microphone attention. At the 42-minute mark, she said something that made my skin crawl. The moment I left my son, I felt the light. I saw it. The guilt burned away in the Nevada wind. He was 9. Children bounce back. I paused, rewound, played it again. That wasn't just an admission, that was proof. She confessed publicly to abandoning me as a child. I emailed the clip to Lena. "You just got your nuke," she replied. I stared at my laptop, the clip still looping. Part of me wanted to release it right then and there. Let the world hear her in her own voice, throwing me away like old furniture. But another part of me knew better. I needed to wait. Time it right. I needed to confront her, not to yell, but to make her squirm. To make her feel cornered. And there was one place that would hit her pride harder than any courtroom, her own stage. So I did what I never thought I would. I signed up for one of her retreats. Next weekend. Tehachapi. Under a fake name. I would sit in her circle, wear her bracelet, listen to her preach light and forgiveness. And when the time was right, I'd drop the truth like a match in dry grass. The drive to Tehachapi felt longer than it was. Maybe it was the dry, rust-colored hills rolling endlessly by, or the fact that I was headed straight into the belly of the beast willingly. I drove a rented Prius under a fake name with a prepaid phone and burner email, the kind of steps I hadn't taken since I left my startup and briefly considered disappearing off-grid. The Grove retreat welcomed guests on Fridays before dusk. Check-in was through a side gate lined with lavender plants and signs painted in soft pastels. Breathe, heal, become. At the end of the dirt path stood the main lodge, an old vineyard mansion repurposed into a spiritual haven, complete with dream catchers in the windows and wind chimes tuned to minor chords. A woman in flowing denim and beads greeted me with a clipboard. "Welcome, River," she said, reading my alias. "You're right on time. The opening circle starts at moonrise." Her voice was syrupy, her smile too wide, like she'd been trained in hospitality by a cult-funded HR seminar. She handed me a canvas bag with a white robe, a copper bracelet, and a journal labeled Rebirth. I thanked her and kept my mouth shut. Every minute here was being recorded at least by me. The pen I clipped to my shirt pocket had a mic embedded, and my room keycard was fitted with a GPS chip. Ezra would be listening, just in case. I entered the lodge where the scent of Palo Santo smothered the air. Around me, other seekers moved in soft shoes and whispered voices. Some looked normal, tired teachers, burned-out professionals. Others had that fragile-eyed glow of people who'd paid too much to be told they were special. That's what Delilah preyed on. People desperate to feel chosen. Dinner was vegan, served on banana leaves, under lanterns. Everyone ate in silence by design. I caught glimpses of her, Delilah, moving between guests like a swan, her arms open, her smile beatific. She touched shoulders, whispered blessings, floated more than walked. It was a performance, a well-practiced one. I clenched my jaw and reminded myself, watch, don't react. She hadn't recognized me yet. I looked different now, beard bulk, calmer eyes, but the moment would come. And I was ready. At moonrise, we gathered on yoga mats, arranged in a circle around a stone fire pit. Delilah stood in the center, wearing a white linen robe, hair braided with what looked like dried sage. She closed her eyes and hummed a low, eerie vibration that made the hairs on my arms lift. "We gather," she said, opening her arms, "not as strangers, but as versions of our truest selves." Her eyes swept across the group, soft and slow. I held my breath. When her gaze touched mine, nothing flickered. No sign of recognition, only her script. "Release your names," she said. "Speak the wounds your birth name carries, then let them go." One by one, they shared. A woman named June sobbed about being called too much her whole life. A man named Tyler admitted he hadn't spoken to his son in 12 years. I listened. And then it was my turn. "River," I said. "I was abandoned at 9. My mother said I was too heavy to carry spiritually, so she left me in the desert. But I didn't die. A beat. I built. I climbed. I became." Delilah tilted her head slightly, something behind her eyes tightening. She didn't speak, but she knew. Her nostrils flared. Her hands clenched then softened. She turned away and moved on to the next person. But I saw it. Recognition. Fear. Maybe even guilt, but no apology. That night, I sat alone on the edge of the property, under a Joshua tree, twisted like a question mark. I felt the heat of the day still trapped in the ground beneath me. Ezra texted, "Got it all. Audio clear. Keep pushing." Lena followed up minutes later. "She's speaking at a donor circle Sunday. I'll be there posing as press." "You want a mic or a moment?" I texted back. "I want a reckoning." The next day was filled with guided rituals, including something called spiritual purging through vocal alchemy, which was just people screaming into the canyon while a woman banged gongs. I kept quiet, observing. At one point, Delilah called me aside privately. Her tone was sweet but clipped. "River, is it you carry a strange energy, not hostile, but watchful?" I shrugged. "Maybe I'm just remembering who I was." She smiled, but her fingers trembled. "Sometimes remembering can be dangerous," she said. "Better to release." She was nervous. She should be. On Sunday morning, the donor circle began inside the vineyard's old chapel. High ceilings, candles, rows of hand-carved benches. A dozen donors sat facing Delilah as she paced before them, with arms open, painting stories of trauma healed and souls uplifted. She looked radiant, convincing. And then, like a magician's final trick, she gestured to the side door. "And today, a miracle. My son, my own blood, has found his way home. He is here, in this room, with us." My throat went dry. Delilah turned smiling toward the back where I sat, hood pulled low. "River," she said, voice trembling, "won't you come forward?" I stood slowly, every eye on me. Her smile widened, but I didn't walk toward her. I walked to the center of the room, pulled the pen from my shirt pocket, and pressed the button. A speaker on Lena's belt clicked on. Delilah's voice played clear and cold. "He was 9. Children bounced back. Gasps." A man dropped his champagne glass. Delilah's face drained of color. She reached out, whether in denial or fury, I couldn't tell. I stared straight at her. "My name is not River. It's Noah Ellis. And this woman, this self-declared healer, left me in a gas station at 9 years old and never looked back. Until now, for money." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For one brutal second, the room didn't move. The only sound was the faint crackle of the speaker still echoing Delilah's confession. "He was 9. Children bounced back." Then came the unraveling fast and sharp. A woman near the front covered her mouth, eyes wide with horror. A man in a linen vest stood shaking his head. "Is this true?" he demanded. Delilah stumbled back. Lips parted, searching for a script that wasn't written for this moment. "That clip was taken out of context," she said, breathless, her voice teetering between calm and desperation. "This man Noah is troubled. He's here to smear the work we do. He's wounded, and his pain is making him cruel." "No," I said, stepping closer to the donors. "I'm here to tell the truth. You all deserve to know who you're funding." This woman left her 9-year-old son at a truck stop with $5 and a bottle of water. Then she built a spiritual empire off the trauma she caused. I paused, letting their silence thicken. She didn't lose a child. She discarded one. And now she's weaponizing forgiveness to clean her name. Lena moved to my side, then flashing her badge. Not a police badge, she wasn't with law enforcement, but a legal investigator's credentials that carried enough weight in this kind of setting. "I'm representing Mr. Ellis in a formal complaint against the Awakening Grove for fraudulent misuse of charitable funds," and false claims in solicitation materials. IRS violations. FTC deception. Delilah flinched. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I could see it all unraveling in her face, not just fear, but something deeper: humiliation. Her power wasn't built on truth. It was built on belief. And belief, once cracked, crumbles fast. A man I hadn't noticed before stood up from the back, silver hair, thick-framed glasses, notebook in hand. He'd been quiet the whole time, watching. "I'm from the Monterey Herald," he said. "I'd love to confirm a few things. Ms. Delilah, would you mind going on record?" Her lips twitched, jaw clenched. "No comment," she hissed. She turned to me, then eyes burning. "You planned this. You ambushed me in my sacred space." "I didn't plan your lies," I said. "I just held a mirror." Security was called, but by then, the donors had started to walk out. The room emptied like a punctured lung. Some people cried. Some stared at the floor, betrayed and embarrassed. Delilah stood, frozen fists shaking. Lena leaned in and said something only she could hear. I didn't ask what. I didn't need to. The next day, the retreat was canceled. The Grove's website went dark within hours. But the internet doesn't forget. Within 48 hours, the audio clip went viral. Ezra uploaded it anonymously to a burner Reddit account, then sent it to a handful of journalists. Abandoned Son exposes mother's cult trended on X within 12 hours. Podcasts picked it up. YouTubers made reaction videos. A former member of the Grove, Sylvia, posted a TikTok sharing her own story, saying she'd watched Delilah manipulate women into surrendering their children to the divine. She cried on camera. Then she DM'd me. We talked on Zoom that night. Her voice shook as she recalled Delilah's purity drills and energetic resets for anyone who questioned her methods. I stayed because I believed her. I thought I was broken, and she had the key. But it turns out she was the one locked in a lie. The lawsuits followed quickly. Lena handled most of them. I kept my distance from the legal sludge, but I couldn't help tracking the headlines. Delilah was silent through it all. No statements, no apologies. Just a slow public crumbling. Her name became shorthand for spiritual fraud on late-night shows. Ezra sold t-shirts that said, "Children bounce back, the proceeds went to foster youth programs." He sent me one. I laughed harder than I had in years, but something inside me wasn't laughing. It wasn't rage anymore, or revenge. It was something emptier, a quiet ache. I kept replaying that moment, her looking at me across the circle, realizing who I was. She didn't cry, she didn't beg. She tried to spin it. She lied reflexively. There was no version of her that ever loved me enough to say sorry, and that realization hurt more than anything she'd done. One morning, I stood in my apartment's sunlight, filtering through the kitchen window, and realized I didn't feel hate anymore. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because carrying it was too damn heavy. I was tired of being the 9-year-old on the curb, hoping someone would come back. I didn't need her to come back anymore. I just needed to decide what I was going to build in the space she left behind. That night, I drafted a plan. Not for vengeance, for something better. A community center, but not one of those cold, underfunded buildings with flickering lights and security bars. I wanted a space for kids like I used to be, lost, abandoned, angry, but smart. Kids who didn't want pity. They wanted tools, skills, safety. I called it Reclaimed. I reached out to Marvin first. I hadn't spoken to him in months. "You always said a man should build something of his own," I told him. "I'm ready." His voice cracked. "I've been waiting to hear that for 20 years. We broke ground 6 months later. Lena helped with zoning and permits. Ezra wired the security and tech. Sylvia ran peer counseling sessions. Marvin taught a mechanics workshop for teens on probation. We opened Reclaimed in a renovated freight depot outside Sacramento. It smelled like fresh paint and second chances. We kept it quiet, no press, no cameras. Until one morning, a local reporter showed up asking for an interview. "Is it true this whole thing started because your mom tried to extort you?" she asked. I smiled. "No," I said. "It started because I stopped waiting for someone to save me." Then she asked one last question, notebook poised. "Will you ever speak to her again?" I paused, thought about it. And then the door behind me opened. A shadow fell across the floor. The door creaked open behind me, and for a split second, I thought it might be a reporter who'd wandered in too far. But the air changed heavy familiar. The smell of gardenia perfume hit first, then the sound of heels on the concrete. I turned slowly, every nerve in my body tightening like piano wire. Delilah stood at the threshold of Reclaimed. No scarf, no linen robes. Just a navy cardigan, a long skirt, and sunglasses that she slid off with trembling fingers. Her face was bare, older, smaller than I remembered. "I heard you opened a place," she said. Her voice was quieter now, unpolished, without the sugarcoating she'd worn like armor. "I thought I should see it." I didn't answer, didn't move. The room behind me buzzed with quiet noise, kids arguing over soldering wires, Marvin shouting instructions in the machine shop, but the space between us was still. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. She took a step forward, hesitated, then lowered her eyes. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said. "Not money, not forgiveness. I don't know why I came. I guess I needed to see what you became." She looked up at the ceiling, like she was searching for the right words. "You know, when I left you, I told myself I was setting you free, that the world would be kinder to you than I could ever be. But really, I was a coward. I couldn't carry your needs, so I convinced myself they weren't real." Her voice broke slightly. She caught herself. "It's strange. I spent years building a narrative around that choice. I made it sound noble, healing, empowered. But when I saw you that day standing there in front of everyone, I realized it wasn't empowerment. It was abandonment wrapped in incense. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to throw a wrench punch, a wall break, something just to feel like justice had weight. But I didn't move. I just stood there and listened, because I needed to hear how far she'd fallen from the fantasy she'd sold. "People stopped calling," she said. "Donors pulled out. My staff left. Even Sophia, the one I called my daughter, she disappeared the night after your reveal went viral. I sat in that house for weeks just listening to the wind blow through the broken windows." She shook her head, laughing bitterly. "I used to think silence was sacred. Now I know it's just empty." I walked past her toward the front desk, mostly to give my hands something to do. I picked up a clipboard, then set it back down. "So what do you want from me, Delilah?" I asked without looking at her. "To say I'm sorry," she said. "Not so you'll forgive me, just because it's true." I turned to her. "You don't get to walk into my life like this. Not now. Not when I've finally built something out of the mess you left. You lost the right to say anything the day you gave me $5 and drove away." She nodded slowly, absorbing it. "That's fair," she whispered. "I just wanted to look you in the eye when I said it, because for years I told myself I gave birth to a burden. But now I see I gave birth to a builder." For a moment, something cracked inside me. Not trust, not hope, just the old ache loosening its grip. "I don't hate you anymore," I said, "but that doesn't mean I want you in my life." Her face didn't change. Maybe she expected that. Maybe she needed to hear it aloud. She nodded again, took a long breath, and turned toward the door. Then she stopped. "There's something else," she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a folded envelope and placed it on the desk. "It's not money, I promise." I didn't pick it up, just stared at it. She gave me a final look, one I couldn't read, and walked out without another word. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, and the halls of Reclaimed echoed with nothing but the buzz of the exit sign, I opened the envelope. Inside was a birth certificate. Not mine, a girl's. Name Celeste Rose Ellis. Mother Delilah Ellis. Father unknown. Born March 11, 2006. Attached was a note handwritten in shaky cursive. "She's yours to find now, if you choose." I wasn't the only life I damaged. I sat back in the chair, hands shaking, heart pounding. I had a sister. The envelope sat on my desk like a ticking bomb. I read the name again, Celeste Rose Ellis, then flipped the birth certificate over, half hoping there'd be more. There wasn't. No contact info, no addresses, just that cryptic note in Delilah's hand. "She's yours to find now if you choose." My mind spiraled. Was this some final manipulation? A desperate bid for relevance? Or worse, was it true? I scanned the document again. Date of birth March 11, 2006. That meant Celeste would have been born 3 years after Delilah left me. So during all the years she was preaching detachment and spiritual purity, she was raising another child quietly in the background. Or hiding her. I didn't sleep that night. My thoughts kept cycling through the same questions. Where was she now? Did she even know about me? What kind of life had she lived? Was she safe, or had she ended up in the same system I barely escaped? By morning, I was in Ezra's inbox with a single subject line: "Find her!" He called 20 minutes later, already deep into the hunt. "Birth record came out of Humboldt County," he said, voice sharp. "That's Northern California. Delilah had a cabin up there back in the early 2000s. I'll cross-reference local school records and family court filings." He paused. "You sure you want this, Noah? Sometimes ghosts are better left where you buried them." "She's not a ghost," I said. "She's family." 2 days passed. Then Ezra called again, this time at 1:38 a.m. "I found her," he said. "But you're not gonna like it." Celeste had been in and out of the foster system since age 11. Delilah had apparently relinquished custody not long after a neighbor filed a complaint about psychological neglect and ritual fasting. No bruises, no broken bones. Just empty cupboards and long hours locked in a dark meditation shed. Authorities took her into protective custody. After that, it was a long trail of group homes and failed reunifications. Most recently, she'd been placed in transitional housing near Modesto. She was now 17, set to age out of the system in a few months. I stared at the ceiling. That gnawing old guilt clawed at my chest, except now it had a new shape. It looked like her. A girl I'd never met, carrying the weight of Delilah's abandonment just like I had. Except she hadn't been found by Marvin. No toolbox birthdays, no scholarship, just silence. I contacted Lena. She helped me navigate the paperwork. I couldn't legally adopt a 17-year-old, but I could apply to be her mentor, her emergency contact. Most importantly, I could show up. The first time I saw her, she was sitting alone on a bench outside the county youth center, legs crossed, earbuds in. Skinny, guarded, pale, with sharp cheekbones and a stare too old for her face, I approached slowly, heart pounding harder than it had in courtrooms, boardrooms, or interviews. "Celeste," I asked. She pulled one earbud out, sized me up. "You from the center?" "No," I said. I think I'm your brother." Her eyebrows raised just slightly, like it wasn't the strangest thing she'd heard that week. "Delilah," she said flatly. I nodded. "She left me too, when I was 9. She scoffed. "Classic." We sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, "You rich or something?" "Kinda," I replied. "Own a youth center. Figures. Everyone they send is broke or religious." "I'm neither," I said. "I'm just trying." Her eyes didn't soften, but she didn't walk away either. I brought her coffee the next time. She didn't thank me, but she drank it. On the third visit, I brought her a gift, an old wrench set the kind Marvin gave me when I turned 11. "So I can fix stuff?" she asked, smirking. "So you don't wait for someone else to fix it for you," I said. She didn't smile, but her fingers curled around the case like it meant something. Over the next few weeks, we talked more. She told me about her homes, one with a cat hoarder, one with a guy who sold fake vitamins on Facebook. She'd never stayed in one place long, never had a birthday party past age 10. They always said I was too angry, too smart, like those two things couldn't fit in one person. I looked at her, really looked, and said they fit just fine. And then one afternoon, as we sat on the roof of the center eating vending machine chips, she said, "So what now? You gonna throw me in a guest house and call it charity?" I shook my head. "No. I'm gonna invite you into a life you get to design. You can join Reclaimed. You'll have your own project, your own space, if you want it." She was quiet for a long time. "I don't want to be another wounded mascot for your redemption story." "You won't be," I said. "You'll be the builder this time." She nodded. Once, just once. That night, back at my apartment, I found a message waiting on my desk. Not an email, not a text. A handwritten envelope, no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid, Delilah smiling. Standing in front of a small wooden structure with a symbol etched into the door, a spiral with a line through it. On the back, "There are still others, more than you know. The Grove didn't die, it just went underground. Be careful who you trust." The Polaroid stayed on my desk for days. That spiral symbol with a line through it, it wasn't just decorative. I remembered seeing it once carved into the underside of a meditation bench back at the Grove. At the time, I thought it was meaningless, a scratch. But now it felt like a signature, a code. Ezra confirmed my gut feeling. Symbol matches a pattern used by fringe spiritual sex groups that die, officially then morph underground with different names. They rotate locations, always small towns easy to miss. Think Sedona Taos Elko. He paused. This isn't just about Delilah anymore. Someone's keeping her fire lit, quietly. The photo had been taken recently. The timestamp metadata Lena pulled confirmed it. A week old, meaning Delilah hadn't disappeared into the shadows. She'd gone deeper. Strategic retreat. I didn't know if she sent the photo herself or if it was a warning. But one thing was clear, her game wasn't over. Celeste leaned over my shoulder as I reread the note. Let me guess more secrets, she said. Cool. Trauma roulette never ends. She masked pain with sarcasm the same way I used to. I looked at her. You don't have to be part of this. Don't flatter yourself, she said. I'm already in it. Besides, you think I'm gonna let you go ghost hunting without backup? She was trying to act brave, but her hands clenched tighter around her cup than she realized. We tracked the location in the background of the Polaroid to a small town outside Grass Valley. Population 3,400. Main export silence. Ezra rigged us with gear discrete cams, backup comms, license plate, scrambler for the car. Lena called in favors with a contact at a nonprofit that monitored rogue cults. They had a file on a group calling itself The Line Within, operating under the same tax-exempt shell the Grove used. Same language, same leadership patterns, same Delilah. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew I couldn't walk away. We drove out at dawn, Celeste in the passenger seat cross-legged, flipping through a spiral notebook. I glanced over. What are you writing? Questions, she said. In case we find her, I'm gonna make her answer them, every single one. The site was easy to miss. A turnoff disguised as a logging road. The dirt path curved through pine until it opened into a small clearing. 4 tiny structures, wooden, unpainted, clean. No signage. Just that spiral with the line burned onto the front door of one central cabin. It felt like walking into a dream you forgot having. We parked and walked in like we belonged. A woman greeted us, early 30s, hair braided, holding a clay cup. Welcome, she said. Are you seekers or returning lights? Returning, I lied. From the desert path. Her eyes lit up. She nodded. Delilah will be pleased. She speaks this evening. Circle begins at dusk. She handed us linen shawls. Just like before. Celeste whispered, feels like déjà vu, except the vibe is colder. She wasn't wrong. Everything looked peaceful, but the air was wrong. Too still. Too rehearsed. That evening, we sat in a circle again, like a mirror of the past. The fire crackled, the sky dimmed. Then Delilah stepped into view. No white robes this time. Just black, plain. Her hair pulled tight. She looked thinner, sharper. Her eyes found mine. And for the first time, she didn't flinch. She smiled. Some of you remember me, she said. Some of you think you know what happened. But truth is not static. It breathes. It evolves. Her voice carried with the same practiced cadence that had once pulled hundreds into her orbit. What matters isn't what I did. It's what I built from the pain, from the letting go. Celeste stood, loudly. All eyes turned. No, what matters is what you never admitted. That you used people, abandoned them, lied and manipulated. You built sanctuaries out of shame. Delilah looked at her calmly. Celeste, you're angry. I understand. You're still integrating. Stop, I snapped. Stop talking like a prophet. You're a coward in disguise. I stepped forward, pulled out the speaker, hit play again. The recording echoed through the circle. He was 9. Children bounced back. Gasps. A few stood to leave, but one man stood to defend her. She saved my life, he shouted. She gave me peace. Another echoed him, then 2 more. It spread like wildfire, some rising to protect her, others backing away. Chaos bloomed. And in the eye of the storm, Delilah stood still, unmoved. She stepped toward me, inches away. Do you really think tearing me down will heal you? She said softly. Or her. I stared at her eyes unblinking. No, but exposing you might stop someone else from getting hurt. From behind me, I heard Lena's voice crack through the walkie now. Law enforcement is in motion. 10 minutes out, do not engage further. I turned to Celeste. We have to go. But before we could step back, Delilah reached into her robe and pulled something small from her pocket. Something sharp. Not a weapon, a key. She extended it toward Celeste. You still don't know the full story. Your father, he wasn't who I told you he was. This opens the safe in Grass Valley. Everything is there. Letters, DNA, proof. Celeste froze. Sirens echoed in the distance. Celeste stared at the key in Delilah's outstretched hand, as if it were burning. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I saw it all play across her face. Confusion, rage, disbelief, longing. She hated this woman, but this was her mother. And that key, it wasn't just metal. It was a map to a past she never agreed to inherit. Don't take it, I said quietly, but I wasn't sure if I was talking to her or myself. Sirens grew louder, slicing through the trees. Somewhere behind the main cabin, tires crunched gravel. Flashlights cut through the dusk. The loyalists around us scattered like startled birds, some yelling, some weeping. A few clung to Delilah as officers began to descend. She didn't flinch. Not even when 2 deputies approached her with cuffs drawn. She turned to me one last time. You think truth heals? It doesn't. It just replaces one illusion with another. Then to Celeste. When you're ready to stop being angry, you'll understand why I couldn't tell you everything. She was arrested without a struggle. And just like that, the woman who had haunted my past and fractured hers was taken away. We didn't speak on the ride home. Celeste held the key tight in her hand, the entire way, her thumb brushing the ridges over and over like she was memorizing them. I wanted to tell her to throw it out, to leave it buried. But I knew better. We both needed to know what was on the other side of that lock. The safe was buried in a crawl space beneath an old greenhouse in Grass Valley, just like she'd said. It was small, rusted, and cold to the touch. The key clicked like it belonged. Inside were bundles of letters wrapped in red ribbon, a few photographs, and a sealed manila envelope with Celeste's name written in delicate cursive. We sat on the floor and read them together one by one. They weren't just letters from Delilah. They were from a man named Daniel Ruiz, a painter from Santa Fe. He'd met Delilah at a wellness retreat before she founded the Grove. They had a brief, passionate relationship, and when Celeste was born, he wanted to stay. But Delilah pushed him away, said family would tether her. He wrote every birthday, every holiday, never stopped trying. There were pictures Daniel holding a tiny baby wrapped in a yellow blanket, drawings he'd made for her, copies of court petitions he filed trying to gain custody, all denied. Celeste cried silently. No sobs, no drama, just quiet, raw grief. I thought nobody ever wanted me, she whispered. I put my hand on her back, firm and steady. He did, he fought. She just never let him in. We found a phone number at the bottom of the envelope. He'd written it in thick marker as if he feared it might be missed. We waited until morning. The call only rang twice before a voice answered, rough, cautious. Hello! Celeste froze. I gave her a nod. Hi, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Is this Daniel Ruiz? A pause, then yes. Who's this? She inhaled. My name is Celeste. I think you might be my father. The sound that came through the phone wasn't words, just a broken exhale, then quiet. I've been waiting 17 years for this call, he finally said. Weeks later, we met Daniel in a park in Santa Fe. He was older now. His once black hair silvered, hands paint-stained and trembling. But when he saw her, something in him healed instantly. He didn't cry. He just reached out and pulled her in like he'd been saving that hug for a lifetime. And I watched. Not from the shadows, not as a ghost, but as a brother. Celeste stayed in Santa Fe that summer. They had years to stitch together, and neither of them wanted to waste a second. She sent updates, photos, sketches, letters she was writing to herself. She said she finally understood the difference between pain and legacy. One you carry, she wrote, the other you get to rewrite. As for Reclaimed, it kept growing. Kids came in from all over, some from shelters, some from broken homes, some who just needed someone to say you matter. Marvin taught his last class that fall. He retired with grease still under his fingernails and a smile that reached all the way back to my childhood. Lena stayed on as legal counsel. Ezra designed an app to connect foster teens with safe mentors and housing. We named it Key after the one Celeste held the night everything shifted. And me, I learned to stop waiting for closure like it was a finish line. The truth is, some scars don't fade, but they don't have to define you either. You can grow around them, build something stronger in the cracks. Sometimes people ask me how it all ended. I tell them it didn't, because healing isn't an ending. It's a beginning, and we're just getting started. Story 2. I'm Ethan Carter, 45, usually the first person awake in our house. On the morning of our 20th wedding anniversary, though, I opened my eyes to silence so heavy it felt rehearsed. No kettle hiss, no half-played podcast drifting from Laura's phone. Just a stillness that pressed against my ribs. 7:12 a.m., late for us. Saturdays are normally loud, our youngest Zoe, blasting K-pop Mason hunting protein shakes. Olivia FaceTiming friends from college break. Today, the hallway smelled like dust. I pulled on sweats, padded to the living room, and froze. They were all there. Laura, 42, in a black blazer I'd never seen. Olivia, 19, spine-straight eyes glittering like she'd landed a debate win. Mason, 17, arms folded like a bouncer. Zoe, 14, thumb-tapping a phone she wasn't really using. And Curveball, my kid sister, Beth, camera in hand, red recording light blinking. No one spoke. I searched for a hint of normal, a coffee mug, a half-wrapped gift, anything. Nothing. On the coffee table lay a thick white envelope with my name written in Laura's crisp lettering. "Happy anniversary," she said, each syllable clipped. I sat. The couch felt colder than the floor. I opened the envelope. Divorce papers, deed transfers, bank statements stripped of my name, a pre-signed custody schedule, even though our kids were basically grown. A letter from an attorney I'd never met. Olivia cleared her throat. "Mom's been planning this for 18 months. We helped. Helped, like it was a school project." Mason's voice was steady. "House is already in her name. Transfer filed last month." Zoe didn't look up. "Your pension's gone too." "Electronic signatures are easy if you have the right codes, Dad." Beth's camera zoomed in. I could see my own stunned face on her little screen. She whispered, "For posterity." Laura crossed one leg over the other. "You get a clean exit if you sign now." A rush of heat climbed my neck, but I held it down. Years of teaching teenagers had taught me that loud reactions only feed a power trip. I flipped the final page. Blank signature lines stared back. "Why?" Laura arched an eyebrow. "Because you stopped listening 10 years ago. Because I'm tired of carrying dead weight. Because I found a man who doesn't treat passion projects like hobbies." Her smile was glass. "Mark, my lawyer is waiting for your call." Olivia's voice was almost gentle. "This is best for everyone, Dad." I laughed then. A dry, startled bark that cracked the stillness. "You believe that?" Mason shrugged. "Facts don't care about feelings." I reached into my hoodie pocket. Their eyes followed my hand like I might draw a weapon. Instead, I set down a smaller envelope, cobalt blue. My turn. Laura hesitated, then slid it open. A single USB drive and a folded sheet. She unfolded, scanned, blanched. "What did you do?" she whispered. Olivia leaned over, reading. Her face drained. Mason swore. Zoe's phone slipped from her fingers. Laura tried to steady herself. "This is a bluff." "Check the timestamp," I said. "Yesterday, 3:47 p.m., County Recorder's Office." Beth lowered the camera. "What's on it?" "Proof the house was never really ours," I said. "I sold it last week to a land trust in Dad's name. Remember my late father, the one you all forgot? The deed cleared yesterday. New owner takes possession Monday." Laura lunged for the USB. I stopped her with a look. "Copies secured." Multiple copies, actually. "Cloud attorney, safety deposit box." I stood. I packed a suitcase before coming down. Didn't know exactly what you'd try, but I had a hunch. Mason blocked the doorway. I stepped closer, voice low. "Move, or I press felony charges for identity theft right now. I have the bank's fraud officer on speed dial." He swallowed and stepped aside. Beth muttered, "Ethan, where are you going?" "Somewhere quiet," I said. "Tell Mark I'll see him in court." Laura's voice cracked for the first time. "You can't just walk away. Watch me." I grabbed my keys from the hook, only mine remained. the rest gone. Figures. Outside winter sun bounced off frost on the windshield. I slid into the driver's seat of my beat-up Subaru Heart, hammering but oddly light. Beth knocked on the window. I rolled it down halfway. "You okay?" she asked. "No, I said, but I will be." What was really on that drive? Enough! I put the car in gear. "Send me the footage later. I might need it." As I pulled away, my phone buzzed. Messages stacked from unknown numbers. Probably Mark, probably threats. I powered the phone off and let the silence return, this time as an ally. I headed toward the old cabin my father left me in the hills, a place Laura never liked. No Wi-Fi, just wood smoke and cicadas in summer. A safe distance to plan my next move. The road curved behind me, hiding the house that once felt like home. Ahead, bare trees lined the highway like witnesses. I gripped the wheel pulse, settling into a steady beat. They thought the game was finished. They forgot the teacher always prepares a pop quiz. And class had only begun. I reached the cabin just after noon, the February air so clear it felt like glass against my lungs. And for a long minute, I sat in the idling Subaru listening to nothing but the engine tick. 20 years of marriage had taught me to fix squeaky hinges, budget for tuition, ignore little betrayals, yet in 45 minutes, my family had dismantled the scaffolding of my life. The cabin, a cedar-sided box perched above the river gorge, had once been my father's retreat when politics in town turned toxic. And today, it greeted me with the same stern silence that used to scare me as a boy. Inside, dust motes drifted like lazy meteors through stripes of winter light. And the only sign of recent life was a stack of firewood Beth must have hauled up last autumn. I dropped my bag, lit the stove, and watched flames claim the first log, while my mind replayed the morning, Laura's arched brow, Olivia's rehearsed cruelty, Mason's shrugged indifference, Zoe's nervous thumb stilling only when the truth hit her. They thought they held every card, but their perfect scheme had one blind spot, the teacher who always left room for extra credit. I opened my laptop, connected the solar battery, and fired off an encrypted message to Miles Delgado, a former student now running a boutique cyber forensics outfit in Denver. Miles had been the quiet kid who sat in the back composing beats on a cracked phone. I'd kept him from expulsion after he hacked the district's grade server to impress a girl. He owed me, and more importantly, he trusted me. Subject line family project, need rush. I attached scans of the forged signatures Zoe bragged about, plus the bank transfer logs I'd downloaded weeks ago when Laura's late-night spreadsheet habits tipped me off. Within 15 minutes, a reply pinged on it. "Mr. C, expect a full trace in 24 hours. Also check your driveway red pickup." I frowned, stepped onto the porch, and sure enough, a crimson Ford Ranger crawled up the gravel engine, coughing like a smoker. Behind the wheel sat Nora Hawthorne, 38 caretaker for the neighboring property and proud owner of the loudest opinions in the county. She killed the engine, hopped out in work boots and a flannel 2 sizes too big. "Figured you'd be here," she called, brushing sawdust from her jeans. "Your sister texted me, said you might need a favor." I forced a smile. "If that favor involves bourbon and fresh gossip, I'm interested." Nora handed me a thermos and followed me inside, eyes scanning the living room like a crime scene. Over 2 fingers of whiskey, she delivered the first bombshell. Laura and Mark weren't just lawyer and client. They were flipping houses for a boutique development fund, buying distressed properties, dirt cheap inflating appraisals, then funneling the gains through shell corporations. The land trust Dad created, the one now owning this cabin, plus my old house, sat right in the developer's crosshairs. "They've been buttering up the county zoning board for months," Nora said. Cheeks flushed from both bourbon and outrage. "Your place is the missing puzzle piece, river access, scenic easement, everything." A slow throb began behind my eyes. Not fear, but the pulse of impending strategy. "So the divorce isn't personal," I muttered. "It's business." In Laura's world, those words are synonyms, Nora shot back. I opened the closet, pulled out a leather-bound ledger Dad had kept since the 70s. Inside, alongside faded fishing licenses and Polaroids, lay notarized addenda that restricted any sale of the trust's holdings without unanimous approval from the trustees, Dad's best friend, Judge Franklin Doyle Beth, and me. Laura had either missed that clause or assumed we'd roll over. I snapped photos and sent them to Miles with the caption, "Leverage." Then I called the judge. The old man answered on the fourth ring, voice gravelly with age, but sharp enough to slice stone. "Ethan, I was wondering when you'd use the escape hatch your father built." I explained the situation in curt, bloodless language. He laughed a dry rasp, like cracking parchment. "Tell Laura her escrow will bounce harder than a bad check," he said. "I'll draft an injunction tonight. Serve papers Monday." I thanked him, ended the call, and let the relief wash over me for exactly 10 seconds before a new dread settled. Laura wouldn't back off. She'd double down, and my children were still her pawns. I needed to pry them free without turning the courtroom into a battlefield that would scar them forever. Step 1, show them the truth. Step 2, give them a reason to choose it. I drafted 3 emails, one to each child, each message tailored to the fault lines Laura had exploited. Olivia craved intellectual honesty. Mason respected strength. Zoe loved stories. I infused each note with evidence and empathy, never blame, and scheduled them to send after Miles finished his trace. I closed the laptop, let out a breath that tasted of pine smoke, and almost believed I could sleep. That fantasy shattered when headlights swept across the window. Another vehicle, this one black, no plates visible. The engine idled, door stayed shut. My phone buzzed, unknown number text, "Only nice cabin." Shame if something happened before Monday. Another ping followed with a live photo of the Subaru timestamped 5 seconds earlier. My pulse spiked, but training kicked in, observe analyzed aside. I killed every light, grabbed Dad's old Remington from the gun rack, checked the chamber loaded, and crept to the side window. The car sat like a crouched animal, exhaust curling. I aimed the rifle just above the hood finger off the trigger, and switched on the porch floodlight. The driver reacted instantly, slamming into reverse and fishtailing down the road, taillights flickering until swallowed by trees. I lowered the gun, heart drumming. On the floor, my phone buzzed again. Same number, new text, pop quiz accepted teacher. See you at finals. Beneath the bravado, I heard the quiver of someone who'd expected an easy A and just realized the test would be brutal. I locked every door, stoked the fire, and unfolded the roadmap Dad had annotated in red ink decades ago. Every hunting trail, every blind turn, every spot with no cell coverage. I marked 3 exit routes, encircled the abandoned ranger station 10 miles north, the perfect place for a meeting that needed privacy. Tomorrow, I'd lure Laura's silent partner there, expose him, and record everything for the court of public opinion. The flames crackled, the cabin walls popped, and outside the wind carried the distant roar of the river, steadfast and patient. So was I. Class was still in session, and the syllabus now included survival skills. Dawn bled across the tree line in cold ribbons of rose and steel, and I woke to the smell of hickory embers and the certainty that today must bite harder than yesterday. Miles had worked through the night. At 5:18 a.m., my laptop chimed with a trove of documents, chain of custody reports, IP traces, offshore account diagrams. Headline: primary financier Adrian Lowe, 51, zoning lobbyist, net worth 40 mil. Lowe's number matched the one that had ghost texted me. Miles also dropped a gift, a deepfake audio file that could mimic Laura's voice with unsettling accuracy, limited to 3 minutes before distortion set in. I brewed bitter cabin coffee, scanned the data, and pieced together the leverage map. Lowe bankrolled the flip scheme Mark supplied legal smoke. Laura provided a family asset she believed undefended, and my children were emotional collateral. I needed Lowe to incriminate himself on record, sever his hold on the project, and leave Laura legally naked. The abandoned ranger station was perfect. No cell bars, one narrow road, thick timber for microphones. Nora arrived just after 6, cheeks red from the ride toolbox clanging in her flatbed. We drove the 10 miles in silence, broken only by gravel pinging the wheel wells. At the station, we planted 2 wildlife cams in knotholes, a lapel mic under the warped meeting table, and a portable hotspot rigged to upload every byte to Miles' secure server the moment we hit signal range again. At 7:43, I sent Lowe a text from a burner spoofing Laura's number with Miles' cloak, change of plans. Meet me at Old Ranger Post off County 9, 10 a.m. Must sign addendum before the trustee discovers clause. He replied within 60 seconds. On my way, alone. I forward-scheduled a second message for 9 a.m. to Mark reading, "Cover me. Lo wants confirmation after signatures. Divide and conquer." With 2 hours to burn, Nora and I rehearsed our roles. She would wait with the truck beyond the bend engine ready. I would greet Lo as the desperate husband willing to sell out the old man's trust for a finder's fee. The act had to be convincing, a bit of sweat on my collar, a touch of fatigue in my eyes, equal parts greed and fear. At 9:55, a black Mercedes GLS crunched onto the weed-choked lot. Lo stepped out wearing a cashmere coat that probably cost more than my Subaru silvered hair razor, neat eyes like polished brass. I noted the slight hitch in his right knee, old basketball injury, per Miles's dossier, filed it as a tactical weak point. "Mr. Carter," he said, hand extended, tone oily. I shook it, feeling the measured strength of a man who hired others to do heavy lifting, but still lifted weights for sport. He scanned the decrepit station. "Charming venue. You have the deed addendum." I produced a manila folder containing a photocopy of the unanimous consent clause minus the signature page, and a forged waiver granting Laura sole authority, courtesy of Miles's graphic wizardry. Lo flicked through it, satisfied. "And your compensation." I named a figure high enough to sound plausible, but low enough to suggest desperation. He smirked. "Easiest money I'll ever spend." When he clicked his Mont Blanc pen, the lapel mic captured the metallic snap. "Sign here." As he bent to scribble, I leaned against the window frame and asked the question I had rehearsed a dozen times. "You sure the appraisal shuffle will pass the audit? Last thing I need is prison time." Lo chuckled, a dry rattle. "Audit, son. I wrote the zoning regs they're afraid to enforce. We flip, we rinse, we vanish. Any heat lands on the wife, she's the visible owner. You get a cashier's check, I get a new marina, everyone wins." He tapped the pen. "Unless you're recording." I forced a shaky laugh. "No signal out here." Technically true. The hotspot lay dormant until we rolled out. Lo pocketed the documents. "Call your wife. Tell her the trustees caved." I swallowed, let my voice tremble. She blocked my number. He sighed, bored already, then pulled a silver phone and dialed Mark's direct line on speaker. Mark answered groggy. "Lo package secured. Prep closing papers by Monday. Trace is covered." Mark the teacher sign. Lo glanced at me, winked. "Oh yes. Couldn't wait to betray Daddy's legacy." Mark laughed. "Perfect. Laura's taking the kids to press interviews tonight. Sympathy tour starts at dawn." Lo ended the call. "Congratulations, Mr. Carter. You're now officially irrelevant." He turned, and that's when Nora's truck roared around the bend. Lo jerked hand drifting inside his coat, but I already had Dad's Remington leveled, not at him but skyward. One thunderous shot shattered the rotten eaves, showering us with cedar dust. Lo froze, ears ringing. I lowered the rifle. "Now you're on my camera," I said. "Your confession goes live the minute this cabin hits a signal. Try to leave before us, and it dumps anyway." His jaw flexed. "Extortion. Evidence." I stepped closer, voice low. "I'll trade it for my family's safety and full release of trust claims. Walk away, Lo. Cash out elsewhere." He studied me, weighing risk. Finally, he nodded once. "Delete the file, and you'll never hear my name again. You'll send Mark and Laura a termination notice before midnight," I said. He grinned thinly. "Done." I tossed him a flash drive. Backup copy. Insurance for both of us. His eyes flickered respect or hatred, maybe both. Then he climbed into the Mercedes and drove off, tires spinning gravel like sparks. As his taillights vanished, Nora exhaled. "Think he'll honor it. He values reputation over revenge," I said, though my stomach wasn't convinced. We packed gear fast, triggered the hotspot for upload, and rolled back toward the cabin. Midway, my phone, now back in range, erupted with alerts. 3 unread emails. Olivia Mason, Zoe. Olivia, Dad. I read everything. Meet me tonight. Alone. Mason, Mom spiraling. She thinks you hacked the bank. Call me. Zoe simply sent a crying emoji and the words, "Is any of this my fault?" My chest tightened, but the mission was working. Cracks had formed in Laura's narrative. Then a final notification slid down, restraining order filing from Mark's firm, claiming I'd threatened Laura with a firearm. Served electronically effective immediately. A digital chess move to pin me before I reached the kids. Nora muttered a curse. I clenched the wheel. Let them think they've cornered me. Monday, the judge's injunction lands, Lowe pulls out, and the order collapses. Still time mattered. Laura would weaponize the restraining order to keep me from the children's ears. I needed a voice she couldn't block. I called Miles. We go public tonight, I said. Cut a montage from Lowe's confession overlay. The forged docs blur my face for now. Schedule drop for 8 p.m. on every platform. Hashtag it, #TrustNoFlip. Miles whistled. Going nuclear, Mr. C. Sometimes you burn the brush to save the orchard, I replied. I ended the call, heart thrumming with dread and purpose. By dusk, the sky flared orange, the color of both warning and promise. I pictured Olivia's analytical gaze, Mason's wary respect, Zoe's fragile hope, and I pressed the accelerator. The next 48 hours would decide whether my family healed or shattered, whether Laura's ambition drowned her or taught her humility. Class was still in session, and finals week had begun. 8 p.m. arrived like a drum roll rolling across the valley. And somewhere down in town, every phone lit up with the hashtag splashed over Miles' slick montage. Lowe's own voice bragging Mark's laughter, echoing forged signatures, blinking red. My face erased, but my purpose unmistakable. And in the instant the video went live, my watch buzzed at a furious pace, notifications piling like hailstones. Some cheering, some jeering, all proof that the story had breached the tidy fences Laura loved to build around appearances. By 8:07, local radio hosts were quoting one-liners from Lowe's confession, 8:12. The county forum exploded with threads calling for a zoning audit. 8:19. A Chicago real estate blog ran a headline, Teacher Outs High-End Land Flip Scam. And by 8:30, the school district's emergency PR team rang my deactivated phone begging for comment, terrified their mild-mannered civics instructor had turned vigilante. Meanwhile, I sat inside the darkened cabin, eyes fixed on the little signal bar of the hotspot, waiting for the ripple to hit the people who mattered most. My children, and when it did, the effect was immediate and brutal. Olivia messaged first 3 sharp words. Mom is lying, followed by a 14-second voice note thick with breathless rage. Mason's reply was colder. She smashed a lamp when she saw the clip and wants us off social for damage control. I'm done. Zoe's came last. Raw text peppered with crying emojis begging me to explain how adults could weaponize love like currency. I answered each in turn, careful to steer them away from blame and toward fact. Each truth another stitch in the ripped fabric of trust. While typing, Miles pinged. Heads Up Mark filed a DMCA takedown of the video, citing deepfake manipulation, but Platform flagged his claim as fraudulent footage stays up engagement spiking. Lowe cornered, but calculating, released a bland statement blaming rogue subordinates. Yet the county clerk, spurred by Judge Doyle's injunction, filing froze all pending deeds tied to the flip fund, which meant Laura's grand payday evaporated faster than snow on a grill. Still, she had one weapon left. The restraining order designed to paint me unhinged. So at 9:02, her polished face appeared on the local news live stream. Children flanking her like reluctant extras. She near tears describing an armed, estranged spouse, spreading doctored videos. But the anchor's side-by-side graphic undercut her script. My classroom photo captioned, Teacher of the Year 2023, beside Lowe's rap sheet for lobbying violations. The girl who once twirled debate trophies suddenly looked as if she realized she'd been handed the wrong cue cards. As the segment ran, Nora's police scanner app crackled with chatter units discussing whether to serve me in person or await clarification. I decided to force clarity, composed an email to Captain Ramirez Sheriff's Office, attaching Judge Doyle's injunction draft and a notarized affidavit of Lowe's confession, link subject line, preemptive compliance evidence enclosed request for interview. Transparency disarms rumor. 10 minutes later, Ramirez called direct voice level Mr. Carter, appreciate your initiative. Remain at your cabin until morning. A deputy will take a statement, no arrest planned. Relief slid through me, yet tension coiled again when headlights climbed the ridge outside Beth's SUV, followed by Olivia's beat-up Civic and Mason's pickup Zoe. in Mason's passenger seat. Against legal advice, they had driven through the Shein night, a roadblock Laura set by confiscating their phones. Beth strode in first, camera swinging. Whispered, "They need to hear from you off record." Olivia marched next, cheeks streaked where makeup once covered doubt. Mason's jaw worked like a man cracking walnuts with his molars. Zoe ran straight into my arms, shoulders quaking. I inhaled their shampoo scents, citrus cedar bubblegum, and felt years of distance shrink. We sat around the stove's glow, and I told them everything, holding nothing back. Laura's affair turned scheme, Lowe's confession, the trust clause, my reasons for the public blast. Olivia cross-examined like a junior attorney until certainty replaced suspicion. Mason asked about gunfire. I explained the warning shot. He nodded grim respect. Zoe sobbed that she forged the pension form because Laura promised college tuition. I hugged her tighter and swore her future would not be built on stolen lines. Beth captured the conversation with her lens, then set it aside, saying, "Some truths are meant for family archives, not YouTube clicks." Near midnight, a single car crept up the drive, Laura's Lexus alone. She stepped into the porch light, face pale but determined, clutching a manila envelope as if it might stop bullets. I met her at the threshold, children arrayed at my back, the tableau reversing the ambush she staged on anniversary morning. She spoke first, voice shredded. Adrian froze the accounts. "Mark's firm is collapsing, reporters camped on my lawn. Call off the video." I shook my head slowly. Too late. Truth doesn't unpublish. She extended the envelope, divorce withdrawal forms, a handwritten apology, asking for private mediation, her pride bleeding on every line. Behind me, Mason murmured, "Damage control." But I caught a flicker of genuine remorse in her eyes. Ambitions scorched, illusions stripped. I told her the restraining order must be rescinded tonight, and the kids free to choose where they stay. She hesitated, exhaled, nodded. Inside the envelope, I found notarized resignations dissolving her stake in Lowe's fund, drafted less than an hour earlier. Proof her empire had crumbled faster than she imagined. We sat at the worn kitchen table, all 7 of us, as the fire whispered in the grate. Laura spoke haltingly of fear of aging irrelevance, the mortgage of waking one day to find purpose gone. I listened, not to excuse, but to understand. Olivia asked if any of her childhood memories were real or just set pieces. Laura wept then, and though my anger still burned, its edges, softened for the lie she lived, had caught her too. At 2 a.m., Captain Ramirez arrived, took statements. Inspected the Remington, confirmed no charges witnessed. Laura signed release of the restraining order, collected Lowe's audio file as evidence, and left with a firm handshake that felt like the closing gavel of a brutal cross-examination. When dawn hinted blue at the windows, the children unrolled sleeping bags on the floor, choosing the cramped cabin over their mother's curated suburb. And as silence settled, I realized finals week wasn't about victory or revenge, but about grading the past and rewriting the syllabus. Tomorrow, the legal dust would swirl, headlines would spike and fade, trustees would reconvene, assets would be sorted. But in this fragile stillness, a new unit began. One teaching all of us that honesty may scorch, yet it also lights the way out of darkness. Morning cracked open with a chorus of tired groans, coffee breath, and the sound of Mason frying eggs in a cast-iron pan older than any of us. Sunlight edged through warped window panes, and for the first time in weeks, my pulse rested below a sprint. Yet the war was far from finished, because Monday meant court filings, press trucks, and Lowe's inevitable counterstrike. I stepped onto the porch, cold boards under bare feet, and watched frost steam off the Subaru, while Nora tuned her radio to a statehouse station reporting that the Attorney General had ordered an inquiry into recent allegations of zoning fraud tied to a lobbyist named Adrian L., a sentence that felt like the first domino in a line stretching clear to Washington. Inside, Olivia scrolled headlines, compiling a spreadsheet of outlets covering the scandal. Mason texted footage to classmates, already memeing Lowe's confession into TikTok satire. Zoe scribbled song lyrics about truth grenades in a bubble letter notebook. And Laura, eyes rimmed crimson, brewed tea, in deliberate silence, clearly unsure where she belonged in this rebuilt family. By 9, Judge Doyle phoned. The injunction had been signed at dawn, freezing every property tied to the flip fund, Lowe's attorney already hinting at settlement. The judge wanted us in court Tuesday for a temporary order hearing and warned that Mark would press the narrative of a volatile husband with a firearm. I thanked him, hung up, and gathered everyone around the scarred kitchen table to outline a plan I would drive to town, file my formal statement, pick up certified copies of the trust documents, then meet with a district rep to secure leave from teaching because my students deserved consistency while the storm raged. Beth would accompany me with camera rolling to maintain transparency. Nora would stay with Laura and the kids, keep them off social noise, and help shuttle essentials from the house under Ramirez's escort. Olivia insisted on drafting media talking points. Mason offered to reinforce cabin locks. Zoe wanted to cook dinner as a truce gesture. Laura whispered, "Let me face Mark," but I shook my head, too risky. On the road down the ridge, Beth's lens captured thawing valleys, frozen headlines fluttering in my mind. At the sheriff's office, Captain Ramirez greeted us with weary sincerity. Recorded my deposition, photographed the Remington for chain of custody, then said off the record that several deputies had watched my civics lectures online and were rooting for me. Next stop, the clerk's office, where the counterstaff normally glacial fast-tracked my copies, perhaps sensing proximity to a statewide story. Phone buzzed. Miles forwarded an encrypted email dump, a tranche of Mark's internal memos proving he knew about Lowe's zoning bribes, with one thread revealing a plan labeled Plan B, Flip Carter's narrative mental instability route. Beth's eyes widened as I read. We filed the emails with the clerk as supplemental evidence and sent a redacted set to 3 investigative journalists. Noon's sun was sharp when we walked the school hallway to meet Principal Hargrove, whose suit looked freshly pressed yet rumpled by anxiety. He thanked me for preemptive leave, assured my position was safe, but cautioned that the board feared community optics. I told him optics could bend around truth, but truth would not bend around optics. He didn't laugh yet. Relief flickered. On our way out, a cluster of seniors approached one, handing me a card that simply read, "Pop quiz passed, grade A+, and the lump in my throat stayed until we hit asphalt again. At 2 p.m., a push alert reported that Lowe's assets had been frozen pending federal review, Mark's firm placed on administrative leave by the state bar, and an unconfirmed rumor claimed Mark was negotiating immunity. I called Nora, who said Laura took the news with a strange calm, as if the final veil had lifted. Zoe's dinner prep filled the cabin with garlic and rosemary, kids trading Spotify playlists while they worked a fragile domestic rhythm reforming from shattered beats. At dusk, I parked the Subaru, stepped into warmth, inhaled roast chicken, and found Laura on the porch wrapped in a quilt. She started to speak, but I raised a hand, asked her to hold whatever apology brewed until the legal fog cleared. She nodded, tears silvering her lashes, and whispered that fear makes clever people stupid. I said wisdom makes broken people honest. We left it there. After dinner, Olivia led a mock cross-examination so I could rehearse testimony. She fired questions about the warning shot, potential domestic tension, my contingency planning. Each answer we tightened into crisp, verifiable fact. Mason filmed angles to gauge body language, noting when I clenched my jaw. Zoe offered comic relief, tossing popcorn each time Olivia landed a bullseye. Even Laura contributed, pointing out phrases that might sound vindictive. Collaboration felt surreal, yet necessary. Like former rivals drafting a peace treaty under candlelight. Near midnight, Miles called with a final bombshell. Forensic audits showed Lowe laundered payments through a charity front that on paper funded after-school programs. That front's treasurer was Mark's younger brother. The hypocrisy stung me as an educator. Miles had CC'd the state superintendent and a watchdog group. Tomorrow's headlines would detonate louder than the first wave. I relayed the news to the room and watched a mix of disgust and vindication flicker across faces. Even Laura muttered monsters masquerading as philanthropists, a realization perhaps of how deep the rabbit hole ran. We tightened security, extra cameras on the driveway, rifles locked, but my gut sensed Lowe's playbook no longer included muscle. His lawyers would now favor back rooms and fine print. Sleep came fragmented dreams of chalkboards turning into court dockets. At dawn, I woke to Zoe softly strumming a guitar chord's tentative yet hopeful lyrics about building bridges from burnt timber. It was imperfect and therefore perfect. We ate oatmeal-loaded documents, and by 8 hit the road in a 2-car convoy toward the county courthouse, frost glinting on every branch like thousands of tiny mirrored futures. Finals were today, not tomorrow, and the syllabus we'd rewritten in blood and resolve was ready for its sternest grader, the truth itself. Frost still jeweled the courthouse steps when our convoy rolled up reporters huddling like ravens, flashbulbs snapping. But Captain Ramirez's deputies formed a respectful cordon, and we climbed the marble stairs head high. Inside, the air smelled of copier toner and old varnish, that peculiar mix of bureaucracy and consequence. Judge Marisol Avery, sharp-eyed behind rimless glasses, presided. She'd read the docket, the injunction, the forensic audits, and wasted no time. Mark's seat sat empty. An overnight cooperation deal had him testifying downtown, so Laura faced the bench beside her public defender, trembling but resolute. Lowe's attorney tried a last-minute recess, citing media hysteria. Yet Avery's voice, as crisp as broken ice, denied it, noting that Lowe himself had failed to appear a silent admission of guilt, louder than gavel strikes. The prosecutor outlined the fraud web Miles's metadata projected on a screen, red arrows tracing shell companies to the fake charity. Then my turn came. Olivia's coaching steadied my pulse as I stated facts. The anniversary ambush forged signatures. Ranger Station confession. Opposing counsel pushed the volatile husband narrative, but Beth's uncut footage showed my warning shot skyward, not menacing. And the chain of custody log proved I'd surrendered the rifle within hours. When they insinuated premeditation, Nora testified how I'd begged county mediation before picking up a gun, a plea on record 2 weeks prior. The narrative collapsed like wet cardboard. Avery ruled the restraining order, Null accepted the injunction, and granted temporary sole authority of the trust to the 3 original trustees, citing clear attempts at fraudulent conveyance. She scheduled a criminal preliminary for Lowe and Mark, and referred Laura to a restorative justice program emphasizing family reconciliation. Outside microphones lunged, but I issued one statement: truth is not a weapon, it's a light switch. Olivia smiled because it was a line she'd drafted. By afternoon, social feeds shifted focus from scandal to civic lesson. Students live-tweeted Carter Doctrine, use receipts not rage, turning it into a study hashtag. 3 weeks later, federal indictments dropped. Lowe pleaded guilty to conspiracy and money laundering, accepting a 7-year term to shield his adult son from charges. Mark, stripped of license, entered witness protection after naming 2 state senators in the kickback chain. Headlines blared, then dimmed as new dramas rose. But in our orbit, quieter transformations mattered more. Laura spent dawns at a women's shelter, peeling potatoes, and listening to stories, harsher than hers, court-mandated hours that soon became voluntary. She and I met every Thursday with mediator Harper Singh, untangling the vines of resentment. Some knots stayed, yet new shoots grew. The kids split, Weeks' college cabin suburb, each finding rhythm. Mason built a woodshed with Nora muscles and purpose replacing teenage scowl. Zoe's truth grenades took second in a statewide songwriting contest. Olivia switched majors to journalism, citing a hunger for systems accountability. Miles' firm landed a state contract auditing nonprofit transparency and sent me a thank you bourbon older than I am. Judge Doyle, grinning through arthritic pain, framed the injunction on his study wall as a reminder that legacies need guardians. By early spring, the cabin once exile felt like headquarters. Evenings we cooked on the same cast iron, played card games. Beth streamed to her tiny but fierce Patreon audience and drafted a family charter, simple clauses about listening transparency and the right to call a timeout before words turned weapons. We called it Pop Quiz Protocol, signing in different colored ink like kids finishing a mural. Final epilogue came at school assembly in May. Principal Hargrove invited me to address civic ethics. I stepped onto stage spotlight, warm auditorium packed. Laura sat halfway back beside the children, nervous yet smiling. I spoke not of courtrooms or gunshots, but of critical thinking and the courage to audit our own motivations. When applause faded, Zoe and the jazz band launched her contest song lyrics soaring: "Burn down the lies, build with the ash, light up the dark with a truth-made flash," and students waved phone lights while Laura wiped tears. No camera chased. Walking home under tulip trees, she asked if forgiveness was a finish line or a relay. I answered that it's a trail marker, proof we're still moving. She nodded promises, quiet yet earnest. The trust land remains unsold, designated now as an outdoor classroom for district field trips. River access hiking paths. Nora manages, maintenance kids volunteer as guides. And every new season, we carve another notch in the old porch post. Not measuring height, but gratitude. Storms will come, the world is a syllabus of unpredictable tests. But we've learned the cheat code is daylight, the study guide honesty, and the final grade, a family writes together one hard-won chapter at a time.